My stepmom demanded I pay $800 rent. So I evicted her, her two lazy kids, and took back the $1.3 million home my grandparents secretly left me. I was still in my apron after a double shift when my stepmom stepped into the kitchen, crossed her arms, and told me I now owed her $800 a month to live in the house I'd grown up in. Her voice was steady, rehearsed like she'd been waiting for this moment. Blake yelled upstairs at his video game. Luna filmed herself in the hallway mirror, and somehow I was the one who needed to start contributing. I didn't argue. I didn't even blink because she had no idea she'd just triggered the one secret capable of ending everything she'd built. People assume a house becomes yours the moment you move into it. But for me, this place was mine long before I understood what ownership meant. I was 8 when my mom died, and the world went quiet in a way no child should ever know. My grandparents, Harold and Elise, stepped in without hesitation. They sold their own place across the city, moved into this 4-bedroom home in Denver, and filled every corner with warmth my father couldn't give at the time. I remember evenings when Elise would sit beside me at the old dining table, teaching me how to slice vegetables without rushing. The smell of simmering broth, the softness of her laugh, those things stitched the first layer of safety back into my life. Harold tended the garden outside, humming while trimming the roses my mom planted. Whenever the wind swept through the yard, it carried a little bit of her with it. That's why the house mattered. It wasn't walls, it was memory. Then Selena arrived. My father met her at a work event, and within months, she was in our living room setting down glossy suitcases and announcing she didn't mind the older decor. She said it with a smile that didn't match her eyes. The first week, she reorganized the entire kitchen. The second, she cleared out Elise's ceramic bowls, quietly replacing them with things she called modern. Harold simply nodded, but I caught the way his jaw tightened. Selena's children, Blake and Luna, slipped into the house like they'd been here forever. Blake claimed the downstairs den for his gaming setup. Luna spread her outfits across 2 closets and declared the lighting terrible for photos. I was 12 when the chores began shifting my way. Small things at first: vacuuming, setting the table, then laundry, then everything. Whenever I asked why Blake and Luna didn't help, Selena would tilt her head and say, "They have different needs, sweetheart. You're more mature." My father didn't push back. He seemed grateful to have someone taking charge of a household he'd abandoned emotionally for years. By the time I was 16, I'd memorized everyone's routines. Blake slept until noon, leaving sour-smelling clothes piled in the hallway. Luna rehearsed her fake laugh in the mirror while filming makeup videos she never posted. Selena floated from room to room, touching surfaces lightly with her fingertips as if testing for dust. She always paused at my mother's framed photo in the hallway, but never acknowledged it. Outside this house, my life felt normal: school friends, part-time work. Inside, I was an unpaid maid, slipping through the same rooms my grandparents once protected. Yet, I stayed quiet, convincing myself it was temporary, that Dad needed peace, that kindness was a form of strength. But the thing about quiet resentment is that it stacks layer by layer until one day even the smallest added weight makes the whole structure shift. And that shift was coming long before Selena asked me for $800. The weeks leading up to Selena's rent demand were already stretched thin. I'd started taking more shifts at the cafe to cover my online classes, and every night I came home to something new added to my list of house responsibilities. Selena never wrote them down. She simply announced them as if they were universal truths. "Laundry rotates on Tuesdays now," she'd say, handing me Blake's overflowing basket that smelled like sweat and stale chips. "The upstairs bathroom needs scrubbing again," she'd add, ignoring Luna's contour powder coating the countertop like desert sand. "Remember to wipe the baseboards. Dust collects quickly in old houses." Old houses. She loved calling it that. Meanwhile, Blake lounged in the den, yelling into his headset, and Luna filmed haul videos surrounded by unopened boxes. When I'd pass through the hallway, she'd glance at me like I was a background extra walking into her shot. Sometimes she'd say, "You should try dressing up more. Might help your confidence." Then she'd smile sweetly at her phone and go back to posing. Selena escalated things quietly, which was her specialty. She'd leave stacks of bills on the counter with my name circled in highlighter, pretending it was a gentle reminder. She'd sigh dramatically whenever I cooked, wandering behind me and adjusting the stove temperature or criticizing the seasoning. She'd tell my father within earshot that I needed to develop independence before adulthood passed me by. But the real turning point came one cold evening when I walked past the partially open door of her so-called meditation room. Her voice drifted out low and controlled. "She needs space, Richard. Sending her to a college out of state would be good for everyone." My father murmured something inaudible. Selena continued, "She's holding us back, and honestly, she's too attached to this house. Distance will help her grow." The words hit me like a physical blow. I froze in the hallway, holding the grocery bags I just brought in the cold air from outside, still clinging to my jacket. She wasn't just pushing chores onto me. She wanted me gone, out of my home. Away from my memories, out of the way. Later that night, while I folded a stack of towels in the laundry room, I replayed the conversation in my mind. My father's silence, Selena's confidence, the certainty in her tone like she was making long-term plans that didn't involve me. Something tightened in my chest. Not grief, not fear, something sharper. I'd spent years telling myself that staying quiet preserved peace, that patience made me strong, that kindness would eventually be recognized. But standing there under the humming fluorescent light, I realized the truth. Silence was exactly what Selena depended on. She thought she knew everything about this house. She thought she understood every advantage she had. She thought I was too timid to push back. And she was wrong. Because that very night, I remembered something. My grandmother once told me as she kneaded dough at the kitchen counter, "The moment you let someone rewrite your place in your own home, you lose more than space. You lose yourself." I wasn't ready to lose anything else. And the first step to taking myself back started with a discovery Selena never saw coming. The next morning, the house felt colder than usual. Not temperature, something else. Something in the walls, in the silence. I moved through the kitchen, washing the dishes Blake had left in the sink overnight, replaying Selena's plan to me out of state as if I were a piece of clutter she wanted removed. It wasn't fear anymore. It was clarity. After finishing the dishes, I walked into the storage room at the back of the house, a place that still smelled faintly of Elise's lavender sachets. Dust motes drifted through the thin beam of winter sunlight as I pulled open an old cedar chest. Inside were things I hadn't touched in years. Harold's gardening gloves, a faded recipe book, brittle photos curled at the edges. And then I found the envelope, my name written in my grandmother's handwriting. Sharp, steady, intentional. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were documents. No specific labels, no complicated forms, just straightforward statements confirming something I had never imagined. Harold and Elise hadn't just moved into this house with us. They had bought it outright and transferred ownership to me long before they passed. Quietly, intentionally, as if they knew I would someday need the protection. For a long moment, I just sat there on the wooden floor, the envelope resting in my lap, the room spinning with memories of Elise humming in the kitchen and Harold tapping mud off his boots by the back door. I felt their presence like a hand on my shoulder, not urging me toward revenge, just reminding me that I'd never been as alone as Selena wanted me to believe. Later that afternoon, I drove across Denver to see Marilyn, my mom's closest friend. Her small craftsman-style home smelled like cinnamon and old books. She listened without interrupting as I told her everything. Selena's manipulation, my father's passivity, the rent demanded the plan to send me away the documents my grandparents had left for me. When I finished, she nodded slowly. "Aurora, your grandparents trusted you more than anyone. They saw who Selena was long before you did. This isn't just a house, it's your boundary, and you have every right to protect it." Her words settled into my bones. We spent the next hour reviewing what I'd found, sorting through additional papers Elise had once given Marilyn for safekeeping. There were old bills notes from Harold about the property and a few recorded voicemails that caught Selena speaking harshly to Elise years ago. Nothing dramatic, but enough to confirm a pattern. Evidence wasn't vengeance. It was truth. By the time I left Marilyn's house, the sun had dipped behind Denver's rooftops, casting the whole city in muted blue. I drove home with a steadiness I hadn't felt in years. Determination. Purpose. Selena wanted to push me out. Instead, she'd pushed me into remembering who this house truly belonged to. That night, as I walked through the front door and saw Selena sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone, I understood something with absolute certainty. She had no idea the power she'd just handed me. And by the end of the week, the balance in this house would shift forever. I didn't plan to confront Selena that soon. I thought I'd need days, maybe weeks to steady myself. Instead, she cornered me the very next evening. I'd just come home from a closing shift, the smell of espresso still clinging to my clothes when I found her sitting at the dining table with a folder placed neatly in front of her. Blake sprawled on the couch behind her headset around his neck, and Luna sat cross-legged on the floor, scrolling on her phone as if the house were a studio set for her next post. Selena smiled without warmth. "Perfect timing, Aurora. We need to discuss your financial contribution." There it was, the line she'd rehearsed, the beginning of the end. I hung up my coat and walked in slowly, letting the quiet stretch. "Contribution?" "Yes," she said, sliding a sheet of paper toward me. $800 a month, plus your share of utilities. It's only fair." She paused, glancing dramatically at Blake and Luna. "Everyone has responsibilities." I looked at her, then at her children. Blake picking crumbs off his shirt, Luna adjusting her ring light. "Everyone?" I asked softly. Selena blinked. "Don't be difficult. They're focusing on their futures. You're working now." A laugh escaped me. Small, humorless. "Their futures," Blake scoffed. "Don't start, Aurora." Luna flipped her hair. "Some people don't get it." Selena's expression hardened. "This is happening. Your father agrees." It's time you learned independence. Independence in the house built by my grandparents' sacrifices. The house I'd cooked in, cleaned in, grown up in. The house Elise had cried in after losing her daughter. And Harold had repaired board by board with his own hands. Selena had chosen the wrong word. I straightened, sliding the paper back to her. If you want a discussion, call everyone downstairs. We're doing this as a family. Selena loved the illusion of formality. She agreed instantly. 5 minutes later, my father rushed into the dining room askew face, tired. What's going on? Selena answered for all of us. Your daughter is refusing to contribute to our household. I didn't even look at her. I looked at him. Dad, do you really think I should pay $800 to live here? He hesitated just a beat, but enough to confirm everything I feared. Selena and I talked about it. It seems reasonable. Reasonable? I repeated softly. For me to pay rent while Blake and Luna don't. My father swallowed. They're still finding their path. I nodded slowly, letting every detail etch itself into memory. Then I placed the envelope, Elise's envelope, on the table. Okay, I said. Then let's talk about the house. Selena's face twitched a tiny glitch beneath the makeup. What does that mean? I opened the envelope and set the documents down, not pushing them toward anyone, just letting them exist. Letting the truth sit between us. This house, I said, quietly legally belongs to me. Silence fell like a shockwave. Blake stopped mid-breath. Luna lowered her phone. My father's eyes widened. Recognition? Guilt? Resignation? Selena laughed first too loudly. What is this? Some fantasy you can ask Dad. I said, my voice even. He's known since Harold and Elise passed. My father closed his eyes. Selena, it's true. They put the house in Aurora's name. The room froze. A stillness so complete it felt like the house itself was holding its breath. Selena stood abruptly, chair scraping harshly against the floor. Why wasn't I told? She demanded. Why wouldn't you share something like this with me? My father shrank under her stare. It didn't seem necessary. Not necessary, she nearly shouted. I've managed this home for years. I deserve to know I cut in. Deserve. You've treated me like unpaid labor in the home my grandparents gave me. Selena pointed a shaking finger at me. You ungrateful no, I said. My voice sharp as glass. We're done rewriting reality. I reached into my bag and placed a second folder on the table. This, I continued, is a summary of every payment, every bill, every expense I've covered for the house for years. My father's face fell as he skimmed the pages. Aurora, why didn't you tell me? You never asked. Selena grabbed the papers, scanning them with frantic disbelief. You think this proves anything? You think you can push me around because you found old paperwork? I didn't react. Instead, I pulled out my phone and pressed play. Her voice filled the room. The recording from her meditation room. She needs space, Richard. Sending her to a college out of state would be good for everyone. She's holding us back. She's too attached to this house. My father went pale. Blake muttered, damn, under his breath. Luna's face drained of color. Selena lunged for the phone. You recorded me. That's legal, I said calmly. And necessary. She looked between all of us, realizing her performance was collapsing. This is my home, she whispered fiercely. I've been here 12 years. You don't get to kick me out. I opened the final folder and slid it toward her. You're right, I don't get to. The law does. She stared down at the eviction notice's official completed stamp. Her mouth fell open as though the floor had shifted beneath her feet. You can't do this, she said, voice trembling. Richard, say something. My father looked at her not cruelly, but with an exhaustion so deep it softened his entire posture. Selena, it's her house. Blake jumped to his feet. Where are we supposed to go? That I said is no longer my responsibility. Luna's eyes filled with tears, but even then she lifted her phone slightly as if instinctively preparing to film her own meltdown. Selena shook her head, muttering, this is absurd. This is revenge. No, I said. This is a boundary you forced me to draw. The room swirled with shock, denial, scrambling accusations. Selena paced. Blake cursed. Luna cried softly. My father sank into a chair like a man finally seeing the wreckage around him. I simply gathered the papers, placed them back into Elise's envelope, and took a step toward the hallway. You have 2 weeks, I said. Then I take back my home. Selena stopped moving. You think you're strong enough to do this? I met her eyes steady, unshaken. I didn't think so before, but you helped me understand what strength really looks like. And as I walked upstairs to my room, leaving all 3 of them in stunned silence, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not fear, not guilt, but the unmistakable weight of my grandparents' faith settling firmly onto my shoulders. The eviction wasn't revenge, it was reclamation. And for the first time, this house finally felt like mine again. 2 weeks passed faster than any of us expected. The morning Selena finally left the house felt strangely quiet. No synthetic perfume clouding the hallway, no raised voices drifting from the den. No demands disguised as suggestions. Blake hauled out his gaming equipment with loud complaints, and Luna cried the entire time, but none of it shook me. I watched from the doorway, steady grounded, knowing this wasn't cruelty, it was correction. My father didn't move out, not officially, but he spent most nights elsewhere. When he did stop by, he seemed smaller, as if he were standing in the ruins of something he hadn't realized he helped build. We talked a few times, soft, uncertain conversations, but neither of us pretended things could return to the old shape. Once the house was empty, I opened all the windows and let Denver's cold winter air wash through every room. Marilyn moved into one of the spare bedrooms a week later, bringing homemade soup and stories about my mom I'd never heard before. Together, we restored the small things Elise had once loved. For the first time in years, I woke up without bracing myself. The house wasn't a battlefield anymore. It was a home. Looking back, reclaiming this house wasn't about walls or paperwork. It was about finally choosing myself after years of shrinking to make room for people who never intended to offer anything back. My grandparents didn't leave me a home. They left me a reminder that love protects even long after it's gone. If you've ever had to fight for your place in your own family, you're not alone. Share your story in the comments and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Sometimes justice is quiet, but it changes.